There are things in the world that are not measured by quantity, but by the value people are willing to place on them. Saffron is one of them. A spice so light that a strong breeze could carry it away, yet it is considered more expensive than gold by weight. People do not buy saffron by the spoon, they buy it by the thread, and often only a few threads are enough. The strange thing is that saffron has never been a food for the masses. It does not appear frequently in everyday meals. It does not fill the stomach. It is not easy to grow. In fact, to obtain even a very small amount of saffron, people must harvest hundreds of thousands of flowers within an extremely short period of time. Each flower blooms for only a few days. Every stigma thread is separated by hand in the early morning before the sunlight causes its delicate aroma to fade. So what has made people, for thousands of years, remain patient with something so demanding? Why did ancient civilizations treasure saffron like a precious jewel? And why, even today, in a world of mass production and industrial food, does saffron still maintain its special position? The story of saffron is not only the story of a spice, it is a story about time, labor, true value, and the way humans learn to appreciate what is rare. To understand saffron, one must first know what it truly is, and why a small part of a single flower can carry such a long history. You will begin to see that right now. Saffron, also known as saffron stigma, is not a seed, nor a root, nor a leaf. It is the deep red stigma located inside the flower of Crocus sativus. Each flower contains exactly 3 thin stigma threads, and that is the entire part that is used. No other part of the plant carries equivalent value. This absolute limitation is what makes saffron fundamentally different from the beginning. Crocus sativus is not a common wildflower. It is the result of thousands of years of domestication from an ancient wild crocus species. What is remarkable is that the saffron plant cannot reproduce by seed. Humans must propagate it by dividing the bulb and replanting it manually season after season. In other words, saffron still exists today because of human hands rather than natural adaptation. Each saffron flower blooms for only a very short time, usually just a few days in the entire year. When the flowers bloom, the entire harvesting process must occur almost simultaneously. Growers must pick the flowers by hand early in the morning when the petals are still slightly closed and the stigma retains its most delicate fragrance. Afterward, each stigma thread is separated, carefully dried, and preserved as a rare ingredient. This explains why saffron is never an ordinary spice. It was not created to be used in large amounts. It was created to be used precisely. The value of saffron does not lie in mass but in density. Only a very small amount is enough to create color, aroma, and a signature for an entire dish. And from this very characteristic, saffron moved beyond the role of a simple spice to become a symbol connected to history, culture, and the way humans define value over time. The journey of saffron began in lands where people learned to observe nature more slowly and appreciate what was rare. Many archaeological records show that saffron was used by humans more than 3,500 years ago. The earliest traces appear in West Asia, particularly in ancient Persia, where saffron was not only used in cuisine but was also associated with medicine, rituals, and spiritual life. At the same time, the Mediterranean region, especially ancient Greece, is also considered another important cradle of saffron, with ancient frescoes depicting the harvesting of crocus flowers thousands of years ago. In the beginning, saffron was domesticated from a wild crocus flower. People discovered that within those 3 delicate stigma threads were color, fragrance, and effects far beyond their appearance. From that discovery, saffron gradually left its wild state and entered human life as a valuable possession. In ancient Persia, saffron was used to color the garments of nobility, to prepare medicines, and to be offered in religious rituals. Its fragrance was regarded as a symbol of purity and luxury. Over time, saffron traveled along ancient trade routes across Asia, Europe, and North Africa. On these routes, saffron was not exchanged like an ordinary food but like a commodity valued similarly to precious metals. The Romans used saffron to perfume public baths, to treat illness, and to color wine. In ancient India, saffron was closely linked with traditional medicine and religious ceremonies, particularly in the region of Kashmir, where climate and soil conditions produced saffron threads with deep color and strong fragrance. Throughout the Middle Ages, saffron continued to hold a special position. In Europe, it was considered a luxury spice that appeared only at the feasts of the wealthy. At certain times, saffron was so valuable that counterfeiting or smuggling it was treated as a serious crime. This reflected a clear reality. Saffron carried not only material value but also symbolic value, representing power, status, and refinement. Despite wars, epidemics, and major historical upheavals, saffron never disappeared. Instead, it quietly endured, preserved through many generations. In the modern era, Iran became the largest center of saffron production in the world, continuing the historical role of the old Persian region. Alongside it, regions such as Spain, Greece, Kashmir, and Morocco still maintain saffron cultivation traditions in ways that have changed very little. The history of saffron reveals something very clear. This is not a food that appeared by chance and then faded with time. It is the result of conscious human choice across thousands of years. And for saffron to survive so persistently, humans have had to intervene, preserve, and sacrifice a great deal. That story leads us to the next part. Saffron does not exist in a natural way like many other crops. It is one of the very few foods whose existence depends almost entirely on humans. Crocus sativus cannot reproduce by seed. If humans stopped planting and propagating it, saffron would disappear. This makes saffron the direct result of thousands of years of intentional selection rather than biological coincidence. Through many generations, people chose to preserve bulbs that produced deeper colored stigmas, clearer fragrance, and better adaptation to harsh climate conditions. This process occurred slowly, repeatedly, and never had shortcuts. No technology can completely replace the subtlety of manual selection. Each growing season becomes another evaluation and a small adjustment to prevent saffron from declining in quality. Saffron cultivation is also a clear example of the limits of industrial agriculture. Saffron flowers bloom within a very short window, usually lasting only a few weeks in the year. When the flowers open, the entire field must be harvested almost at the same time. No machine is precise enough to separate the 3 delicate stigma threads from each flower without damaging them. Therefore, every flower must be picked by hand, and each stigma must be separated carefully. After harvesting, saffron stigmas must go through a carefully controlled drying process. If dried too quickly, the fragrance is lost. If dried too slowly, the quality declines. This stage determines most of the value of saffron and also requires the most experience. Skilled saffron growers often rely not only on instruments, but also on aroma, color, and the feeling of the stigma when touched by hand. Because of these limits, saffron cannot be expanded through ordinary mass production. Low yield is not a weakness to be fixed, but the price required to preserve quality. Humans have accepted the trade of quantity for value. They choose to keep saffron rare, pure, and difficult to replace. Viewed from this perspective, saffron is not only the product of soil and climate, it is the product of decisions, patience, and a long relationship between humans and a very special plant. And this carefully controlled intervention has created the foundation for what attracts the most attention about saffron today. That is its powerful biological effects on the human body, even when used in extremely small amounts. The most remarkable aspect of saffron does not lie in containing large quantities of nutrients in the conventional sense, but in the way its compounds operate at very high density. People do not use saffron to supply energy or to feel full. Saffron is used because of its subtle yet noticeable biological effects, even when consumed in very small amounts. Among more than 100 compounds found in saffron, Modern science focuses primarily on three major components. Crocin is the compound responsible for the distinctive golden-orange color of saffron. It is a water-soluble carotenoid with strong antioxidant capacity. Crocin helps neutralize free radicals, unstable molecules that can damage cells over time. What is notable is that crocin does not exist only as a coloring agent, but also has the potential to influence sensitive tissues such as the brain and the retina of the eye. The second compound is picrocrocin, the component that creates the characteristic mild bitterness of saffron. Picrocrocin receives less attention than crocin, yet it plays an important role in forming the overall flavor and acts as the precursor that produces saffronol during the drying process. Saffronol is the third compound and the factor that determines the very distinctive aroma of saffron. This fragrance is not sharp or harsh, but warm and deep, often described as resembling hay mixed with honey. Biologically, saffronol has the potential to influence the central nervous system, particularly mechanisms related to mood and relaxation. In addition to these characteristic compounds, saffron also contains several important vitamins and minerals. Vitamin C and vitamin A contribute to overall antioxidant capacity. Minerals such as manganese, magnesium, iron, and potassium appear in relatively high density when measured by equal weight. However, the important point to understand is that saffron is not used in a way that supplies the daily requirement of these micronutrients. Its value lies in concentration rather than absolute quantity. Modern nutrition science views saffron as a source of biologically active compounds rather than a nutrient-rich food in the traditional sense. These compounds have the ability to interact with regulatory systems within the body, from oxidative reactions to neurotransmission and inflammatory responses. For this reason, even a few threads of saffron can produce measurable changes in research settings. This perspective helps explain why saffron receives attention across many different fields of study. It is not a vitamin source intended for daily supplementation, but a biological support substance that works quietly yet with clear direction. When saffron is understood in this way, the benefits people experience in everyday life become easier to explain. And those real-world effects will be the focus of the next section. The biological effects of saffron would not mean much if they did not create real differences in everyday life. What makes saffron interesting in many modern studies is that its compounds, when entering the body in very small amounts, can still produce changes that people can clearly perceive. One of the most frequently discussed benefits is saffron's influence on mood. Compounds such as crocin and saffronal have the potential to affect neurotransmitters related to emotion, particularly serotonin. Because of this, saffron is often studied in the context of supporting improved mental state and reducing feelings of anxiety and stress at mild to moderate levels. What is notable is that these effects tend to occur gently without creating stimulation or dependence. Sleep is another area where saffron shows supportive potential. Many people use saffron as part of an evening relaxation routine because it may help the body transition more easily into a resting state. Rather than causing sudden drowsiness, saffron contributes to improving sleep quality, helping sleep become deeper and more stable, particularly for people who frequently experience mental pressure. In terms of vision, saffron attracts attention for its potential ability to protect the sensitive cells of the retina. The antioxidant compounds in saffron help reduce the impact of oxidative stress on the eyes, a factor associated with age-related decline in vision. This is why saffron appears in studies related to supporting eye health in middle-aged and older adults. Cardiovascular health is another aspect often mentioned. Through its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, saffron may help support the stability of blood vessels and the balance of indicators related to blood lipids. These effects are not immediate, but accumulate gradually when saffron is used regularly and reasonably. In addition, saffron also attracts interest in skin care and reproductive health. Its antioxidant capacity helps protect skin cells from harmful environmental factors, while its influence on mood and circulation may indirectly improve overall quality of life. In women, saffron has been observed to help ease certain discomforts during the premenstrual phase, such as mood fluctuations or fatigue. All of these benefits suggest that saffron is not a miraculous solution but a subtle, supportive substance. It does not replace a healthy lifestyle but can play a complementary role when used properly. And to use saffron effectively, it is equally important to understand the proper methods of use and the necessary precautions, which we will explore in the next section. Saffron is not used in the same way as ordinary spices. Its value lies in using very little, but using it correctly. Just a few saffron threads are enough to provide color, aroma, and noticeable biological influence. Using more does not increase effectiveness proportionally and can sometimes lead to unnecessary waste. In cooking, saffron is usually soaked first in warm water or warm milk so that the active compounds are slowly released. This infused liquid is then used to cook rice, soups, tea, or dishes that require delicate fragrance. Cooking saffron directly at high temperature for a long time may reduce its aroma and quality. Therefore, gentle preparation methods are generally preferred. In terms of quantity, saffron should be used at a very low level. It should not exceed about 1.5 grams per day. For most people, the actual amount used is much lower. The key factor is consistency rather than increasing the dose. Certain groups should be cautious when using saffron. Pregnant women, especially in the early stage of pregnancy, and people with underlying health conditions or those taking medication should consult a professional before using saffron for health support purposes. Saffron is a spice and a supportive food, not a medicine, and it should not be considered a substitute for medical treatment. Understanding proper use helps saffron maintain its natural role, a small, delicate substance that works best when placed thoughtfully within everyday life. In a world where food is increasingly produced faster, in larger quantities, and at lower cost, saffron still exists as an exception. It does not pursue quantity. It does not adapt by becoming mass-produced. Saffron preserves its nature, rare, slow, and demanding patience. And that is exactly what gives it special meaning in modern life. Saffron reminds people that real value is not always found in what is easiest to obtain. A few tiny stigma threads can carry thousands of years of history, human labor, and subtle effects on the body and emotions. It does not transform your lifestyle after a single use, but it can become a small part of a more mindful way of caring for yourself. When looking back at the entire journey of saffron, from its ancient origin, the persistent human intervention, to modern science and daily life today, it becomes clear why it continues to be respected. Not because it is expensive, but because it reminds us to slow down, to pay more attention, and to be more selective about what we place into our bodies. If one day you encounter a few saffron threads in your kitchen, you may see them differently. Not only as a spice, but as a story that has been preserved for a very long time, waiting to be heard.